We are back here, and I have with me Mr. Marcus Smith, and we can see Marcus. Listen, welcome to the I'm having a podcast format today.
Very good to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you, and I'm gonna hope they can get some chat up here so I can see on my end too. Some of you that are chatting in right now, but all of you that are here, I want you to know I'm so excited to have Marcus here with me. Marcus is someone that you've been a core leader in the business for some time, and watching you grow in technology and in business and marketing and just general knowledge has been really refreshing. And so I don't know what's about to happen right now, but I know it's going to be explosive. Now, you are a person that is, once you start opening up on the inside and letting some of that knowledge and wisdom out, I know we're going to create a lather. But how does it feel just to, be in a situation now where you've got so connected to this thing called marketing? Because I don't think you've always, I don't think you just grew up saying one day, I want to know more about marketing. In terms of your background and your journey, how did you end up even caring about marketing?
I would probably say, I know in my high school years when I started looking at dealing with sports, went to a very prominent high school. A lot of it was about following the coach that I was very attached to in high school. And I know that the school itself had a certain brand, and we was known for winning a lot of state championships. I was really drawn to sports in that regard, and really the brand behind the sport. But I remember going into college at Grambling State University, Eddie Robinson, who's he had such a charisma in the South. My best friend, he went there before, and I wasn't going to go to that school, but my best friend talked me into it on signing day, and he mentioned the whole brand of Eddie Robinson. He said he wanted you there, and I decided to sign at Grambling, but I realized that there's a business behind the sport as well. And I remember noticing the good parts of it was that, you had Nike, you had, they was sponsoring the jerseys at the time. They was on commercials at the time. And this was like in the late 90s when Eddie Robinson hit that 500.
Right.
And it really pulled me in. But I remember seeing also the harder side, especially here a lot in sports, about being a commodity. And I learned that you can be a brand or you can be a commodity. And there's a difference. When you're a brand, you can actually step outside and people are actually willing to pay for that substitute or whatever it is, whatever that item is. But when you're a commodity, it's a different ball game.
Yeah. Well, now tell me this, though, because that's a lot of deep insight just about that experience, because Eddie Robinson himself was a brand, right? Yeah. Grambling was a brand. There's all the battles of the bands, all the things that happen, especially at historically black colleges, and just there's a whole culture around that. And when you started to, and also football is a game of strategy, right? Yeah. Immense strategy. Trying to, there's a lot of times fights over playbooks and who knows what the person's going to do next. And so at the time, did you think at all about marketing, or is it more of a retrospect that as you grew and developed some sort of interest in marketing and what it was about, you can look back and see some of these insights in your journey?
Definitely looking back, because I went and I wanted to be more in the media side. So I wanted to be like behind the camera, do like directing, studio type stuff. So I was in mass communication, and I was really focused on that. But yeah, definitely looking back, I noticed that same skill that I even learned there. Of course, my best friend that talked me into going there, he passed away, got killed. It was a different environment. Wow. And I remember I had to kind of separate my environments. But I remember going back to college and really working at selecting a major. And I remember I had a funny story, because some of my courses, I went from a historical black college to a different college that wasn't historically black. But I remember a lot of things wasn't transferable, certain courses. And I remember choosing marketing at that point, because I remember that whole thought of, understanding business and the business behind sports, and wanted to maybe even consider doing something different. And I remember marketing came up as a good option to pivot into. Now, the school that I went to was heavily infiltrated with technology too.
Right.
Surprisingly, it was so many innovations that were happening within technology. it kind of put me in a place where I saw the technology infiltrate marketing, just like technology infiltrates all forms of business. I saw that convergence begin to happen, and I just was just at that good feeding ground for that.
I mean, what a powerful story, very powerful story, and condolences to your friend that was lost. You know, there's so many impactful moments in our life when we look back and we start to remember where we were and what was going on. And, and I want to share this with the audience too, you know, just kind of some deep stories here too. Actually, my godmother, who was a woman that really took me in, her and her husband, when I was in a very bad situation, domestic violence, all kind of stuff, is actually, you're directly related to her. And when I found out about you, you know, and, you know, I'm probably your older brother's age, but when I start to find out about you and kind of watching you grow and what you were going through with school education and your journey, first connecting with you before who would know one day you would be in this business that I created and actually helping me to achieve success in business. But there's a connection there that we had, you know, like a family connection because of that central person. And it's amazing because when I bring this up, I'm saying this because marketing is a lot about stories, right? And just right here with us just talking, there's so many stories and sub stories, and people who are good marketers are able to connect with those stories. And depending on what we're talking about, we might tell different aspects of the story. But I just want to say, you know, more brother to brother, that I appreciate forming a bond with you early on and having a chance to see you begin to discover your own talents and your own epiphanies, your own skill sets, because I've seen you do the hard work and work all types of jobs, you know, and then I've seen you put the work in and be able to look back and make so much more out of the way your life unfolded, you know. And so I just want to say that, I mean, I think your story is very powerful.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is there's a lot of key leaders that I've had in my life, even my father, but also looking at the coaches over my life. I always needed a level of high, intense leadership. And I know I got that out of Eddie Robinson. Doug Williams came in some of the subsequent years that I was there. But also, even in my both natural and spiritual life, I needed a lot more leadership. I knew that early on. I always loved being in a team environment. But when I met you, I know that that's something that I really desired, is that be in a team, as well as have some, you have like high octane leadership. So I like that. It makes me better. It makes the teammates that I work with better. And that's why I've been here all these years.
No, I appreciate that. And I remember the first time I was just trying to get to know, you know, some of your skill sets, and I was looking at some of the opportunities, and actually there was a very key leader. It had been in the company with me for some time, who you took an interest in, and I remember all at once of saying, who is this here that's taking some interest here? And the next thing I know, I start finding out about some skill sets you had, because your wife now is one of the, you know, key leaders in the company, has been a big help to me down through the years. And to see that, okay, here's someone else that has some talent as well that could be an addition to the team. And I love, because we have a family environment in our company. And I remember you showed me some video work or something. When it started off, when I was getting to know you, you was bringing me some video work and showing me some of the stuff you could do. And I started to see your creative mind, and just that you could go in and you could learn something, and how you thought in stories, you thought about how things lined up. You thought about, you know, you thought very strategically. And so I don't know if at that moment you were, you know, because I think this started off more in the media production and kind of videography side than it did some of the more theoretical and strategic sides of marketing.
Yeah, we started definitely with, I remember watching you do a lot more, because you needed to have that one-to-many relationship with different audiences so that you can start definitely, I know you was doing a lot of consulting in Fortune 500 companies. We was doing life skills at the time, helping a lot of youth. And I saw that pressure that was on you at that time, and I was thinking, you know, like, I know that that's going to be a medium that's going to be needed in the future, but didn't know how it was going to come together. But that's where I felt like, again, you in that leadership, definitely within the company, as well as I see a lot of CEOs that, kind of hesitate, especially within marketing, of stepping into that space. Normally in the past, I know when I was going to college, you have to pay $10,000 for like this Nexus report that will give you all this marketing data. You had what was called GRP ratings or for different media outlets and stuff. And that's what you had to do in order to even know if you're infomercial or commercial. You spend tens of thousands of dollars. So I've seen you go through that transition when I think a gentleman came, and I remember he was sitting there talking to us, and we can't find this gentleman till today.
Right.
But we were sitting in a meeting, and he just started talking about some of the modern things with technology that we're doing even today. It's like, you need a camera over here, you need a camera there, you need to be publishing, you need to have your convictions out there, you need to just just record everything. Pull up your phone. I remember at the time it wasn't even like a smartphone, but it was like you need to record everything. And I remember when that happened, and you jumped right in. I remember you gave me that book, 0 to a Million, and you said, break this down, read it. And I remember that's where the journey kind of began a lot with marketing. And I've seen where we've been more like a kind of a hidden gem for some years, because we've used all these tools, especially what you learn with value center management, to survive. Because it was 2008 hit. We rebranded. We learned how to just, we was really taking all this secret knowledge and just making sure our people survive. Right. That's what we've been doing for years. But I've seen now it's like you can't hide it anymore. So I'm excited, and I'm always behind the scenes, but I like how the message that's within our story and our life is starting to evolve to be more, I guess, public. But I definitely appreciate you in that regard.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think that history is really powerful. And I want to jump for a minute into. Let's jump into marketing, and we're gonna kind of start with some discussion about marketing, kind of end up where we are today. There's everything going on. Artificial intelligence is changing the game. There's just a whole new paradigm shift. There's a major adjustment that people are gonna have to make in terms of how they see and think about what marketing really is. One thing that I want to say is just, let's just take a step back in terms of what marketing is. I still remember, and I think you have something similar, and I don't remember if this was in my bachelor's or my master's program, but we had to do, I think it was a strategic marketing class, and we had to do where you have a company and you have to decide what decisions, where you're going to invest your money toward and what things you was going to do. And then it ran the simulation and showed you the impact of your decision. And you had to keep coming back and then, running your decisions to see how your business turned out. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we had that software. You can hire more sales reps, or you can take lines of credit. Like, it was all kind of things on finance as well as your employees. I really like that example.
And it kind of made you think, and when I think about just the things you learn academically about marketing, you learn about different markets, you learn about the 4 Ps, you learn about all these different things. But it's an amazing thing to understand that marketing has so much to do with belief, right? And really getting people, making a decision about what you want people to believe. And I shouldn't even say people, what you want specific people to believe, people that you've thought about. And so when you think about the word marketing, what does that mean to you?
Okay. I would probably, and again, I know I can get a little far into historical reference, but you said that it's always been here, and that's so true. It's really just more of a social behavior. And it started anywhere that's dealing with trade or negotiation. It started eons ago, where you had a fisherman. They may go into what they call a bazaar or a market in the history, and they may have a batch of fish, and they may take one of those fish, pass it out to the local villagers just to say, hey, this is today's catch. And that same principle you see even today, where people have value, of course, and they need something, and they want to exchange for it, but they have to believe in what, it's a certain belief you have to have in order to give your money over for whatever that commodity is. And you may have, again, historically, you had a lot of references to a lot of trade back then, but you also had what was called campaigns, even in military. You know, you had countries and cities. Look at the city of Ashur, the Syrian Empire, which is one of the first historical reference of a king putting a message out there. You know, they may do like a steal, or they may put like have emissaries. They'll go and tell people like, each year I'm doing a campaign and I'm taking another city.
Right.
But they used to send messages out just so that either that fear or whether they need to be a tributary or whatever, they used to put that message out to get people to convert to be a part of that empire. And you see the same thing in today's society, where people are trying to build, whether it's an online empire or they're trying to build some type of messaging to get people to be persuaded. They really use that same messaging. I know we like that movie, The Inception, but the key is to make sure that that message is so pure that the person that you're speaking to feel like they created it or own it themselves. So it's so important to look at the messaging behind a lot of what you're seeing and even advertising.
And Marcus is very well said. I appreciate you going into that history. I mean, and this is something that's even being used for evil, right? When you study Adolf Hitler, I mean, this was a very extreme marketer for evil. But I mean, from all of the propaganda, all of the messages, all of the flyers that they would drop in certain towns, and how they would prep people to believe what he tried to make the Germans believe about themselves, the fear he tried to strike in other communities. So marketing, again, it can be used for good or evil, but the tool is very powerful in that it is always centered around a message and a belief system. Because if you don't have, people don't take action until they believe something.
Yes.
So if marketing is about getting someone to take action for someone's business or anything else, there's got to be a sense of being a good storyteller and a good message deliverer, and that doesn't have to be for evil, and it doesn't have to be for good. So we have to choose how to use this weapon that could be a double-edged sword, depending on how you swing it.
No, I think that's a good nexus point that you use in history, because right after World War I and II, we start seeing a lot in the Industrial Revolution as far as technology when it came down to marketing. We know about Uncle Sam, we know about the brand that had established, but there was a lot of messaging in order to get people to rally to do certain things together in order to make sure that the country was viable at that time in war. But we also saw technology start to influence marketing. You had the radio, where you started noticing that we were using it for all types of means, but you have what we call the soap opera today was developed from the radio and advertising. That's why it was actually a Lux soap company that was actually doing it. But they were using that time period to really learn more about end users and customers. And then from there, you have like this whole evolution of marketing through technology that took messaging that's where, when we talk about marketing, it's crazy today.
Right.
It started a lot in not our generation, but in our current American history, that you can look in the 1900s and 1950s, you hear about TV shows like Mad Men, where you have those advertisers and they learn how to do certain things to get people to buy and sell. But we see during the 50s, you have people that have came up, like you have different really good people like Peter Drexler, who's a really good marketer that really showed a lot about business and marketing. Then you have different individuals that really took advantage of, like in the 1970s and the 80s, with technology, again, with the TV and the television. They start
P.T. Barnum and people like that.
Yeah, and Barnum and Bailey was the first billboard that was known in America that it was for a circus, but he got people to come to that event. So, but the problem back then was they couldn't really see, in newspapers as well, but they couldn't really see. They focused on impressions, and they kind of, again, I used the term earlier, that they use more of a rating system to just know that, hey, they may got this amount in circulation, but they didn't know who really read the ad.
Right.
But during the 1990s, like, you have the internet that came about.
Now wait, before you go there,
it got crazy.
Yeah. Now before you go there, because this is perfect, because I want to talk about a brand, and and then lead into brand marketing, and then kind of move into direct marketing, which is kind of where you're heading. We start getting with the internet and things, how things change. And one thing, I just want to bring into this discussion the power of understanding brand. And a lot of people who will listen to this, they need to understand that a brand is not a logo. A brand is not a website. A brand is not a color scheme, a look and feel. It could be a part of it, but a brand is really a story, right? If you can create a story that is surrounding something in which people want to pay to be a part of that story, where people understand when they see that brand, it denotes a story. I was listening to, I think it's Seth Godin, that really, really strong marketing mind. He was talking about the difference between like a Nike and like maybe a Hyatt or a Marriott or different ones like that. And he was making a pretty edgy comment whether or not Hyatt and Marriott and some of them really had a brand. Because he was saying that, really Nike has built a brand, years of creating a distinct story around performance and athleticism and just doing it. And they have put so much into that, like a real cause they're fighting for that's in the minds of the people. And he was saying if Nike put their name and started a hotel, everybody would expect a certain experience in there, and there'd be certain people it would draw. I mean, you would be thinking about it would be different. You would automatically, he said, but if Hyatt or the Marriott came out with some tennis shoes, you wouldn't know what to expect. Exactly. It wouldn't even make sense. So he made a critical statement, Mark. I just want to see what you thought about this. He said, what really makes something a brand is how much someone is willing to pay more for what you have than your substitute. In other words, people will pay more for a Nike shoe, even though it is still a shoe.
Exactly.
But they will pay more for that shoe than it will a substitute that versus Marriott, Hyatt, all that, it becomes a price war. If I can get a better deal and go to Hyatt, I'll go. If I can get a better deal and go to Marriott, I'll go. So what's your take on that?
It goes back to the story, because story will drive, of course, if your story has conviction, it's going to drive that community, because you're going to have multiple people behind a certain conviction. That's where you go from a community to a movement. And once you have, really brand is tied more to you have what is called consumer affirmations, and then you have that affinity. And once you have an affinity with an audience, they're going to, they see the value. They're either going to want to be like that, like they're going to want to be whoever that person is that's wearing that brand. That's why you see now influencers are really taking a lot of lead of marketing now, because they know that that person has, a following, and people are going to want to be either like them or be in their lifestyle, whatever it is.
Or against them.
Against them.
But all attention is good attention in marketing in a sense,
And that's where now marketing is more about the fight for attention too, because you can see, direct sales was a lot through the mail at first, and that's like what was very measurable. But now with the internet, of course, you had email, and then you can start seeing people open. But the qualitative side of marketing used to be more important.
Right.
Like making the creative, making things look good, making things, the ad needs to pop. You make that one video and then you spread it across millions of individuals.
Right.
But now it's a lot more inverted. Now you need to look at more of what's the numbers.
Yeah.
And can I get these knowledge or these people that are influencers to really spread that brand?
Yeah, and I want to come back and compare the two, because I actually want to discuss the place that brand marketing is needed versus direct marketing, because I think sometimes we might not understand the need for both. We're in a very direct marketing oriented world right now, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But brand marketing is where a lot of things began, is where it was more about the brand, the billboard, the story, and all of your major food groups, Procter and Gamble, all the major things that you see out here today that go back into the early 1900s that are still standing today is because of good brand marketing. There was nothing measurable. You couldn't measure how that logo for Ford Motor Company was generating anything, but this story of Henry Ford and the Model T and the, being able to go wherever you wanted to go. People got wrapped up in those stories, and marketing for many times was just who had the dominant story that you wanted to be associated with, right? But you couldn't really measure it, right? It was more about how much noise can I make and attention can I draw just by staying relevant and top of mind.
Yeah, and some of the big brands now, they're starting to understand through quantitative side of marketing, seeing the numbers, that they can really exploit and find better ways of even marketing their brand and even expanding it. For example, you have different companies that may have, in the old time, they may have used a lot of the commercials or what have you, but now through social media, now some of them, let's look at Hilfiger. I remember during the 90s, Hilfiger was a popular brand among the African-American community. That was a good example of a company that had a brand already. It was very well established. People were buying it, but they even had to make a shift because they realized that your brand can be even taken by your audience now, especially on the internet. When you have during the 90s with certain brands that people have put out, and your brand can be taken by your audience now. And what they interpret can be more important, right. And you may have to pivot. So that's where, again, some of the quantitative side, seeing people, the mob, so to speak, take your product. And
that happened with Twitter and Facebook, right? Twitter was not intended to be what it ended up being, and Facebook wasn't either. It was a matchmaking site, right?
Exactly.
But the people took it over and determined what it really was.
Yep. And a lot of the big brands now, they understand that dynamic, and you don't see a lot of them. They may pay for a Super Bowl commercial, but a lot of them figure out, okay, how can we get it into the influencer's hands? So that's really just something I think that's a phenomenon that's happening. We're experiencing that now, being able to go online and see that it's more about publishing and seeing how the market get that consumer affinity first, see what people are responding to first. And there's a big fight now about should I focus on, again, the creative or the message. So you can test the headline quicker now and see an audience. Do I get a focus group today? You don't hear about focus groups as much anymore because they know that you can get those answers now just by putting it online and seeing what people are doing with it.
Yeah, let's move into that. So fast forwarding, right? We come into the age of more direct response, direct marketing, and I would even go as far as saying measurable marketing, right? Because that's really, and if you're listening to this, to understand the distinction between brand marketing, which is where you might see a commercial for Wendy's or McDonald's or some specific brand that is very well known, and there's no call to action. Like it's simply just some silly commercial, but they understand that they have to stay relevant in the mind of the people. That brand is about continually staying relevant in the mind of the people and keeping that story in front of you. Whereas direct response and direct marketing is saying, I am actually have a call to action. There's something I want you to do, and I'm going to measure whether or not you did that or not, right? Which allows us to get direct feedback from our customer now, to your point, where we can understand, did they like this or didn't they like it? And it's a powerful thing, Marcus, when I can on Tuesday put something out in the market and by Wednesday adjust from the feedback of the market. And this is what I think start to change the game is now we've moved from the age of brand marketing dominance to more direct marketing dominance. Yeah, would you agree?
Definitely agree. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk is like one of the flagship individuals that really focus on putting that creative, like the battle between creative and then your messaging, especially if you're trying to launch a brand. Whenever you're trying to launch a product, I think they did an example when they just kind of put it out there, and even the imagery of it may not be what's in your mind. There's so much bias that you can have as a business owner or entrepreneur to say, hey, this is my brand positioning statement. This is our mission statement for our brand. Is it on brand or not? He really, is opening a lot of people's eyes, especially top executives, to look at that different. And now it's more about, okay, can I go out there and see, even in an ad, can I test the message? Should I test first? Like most companies, they were, had this big $1 million budget to make a video. But now through technology, again, anyone can make a video, anyone can make an ad, anyone can even see marketing data now. I remember in college, again, no one had access to it unless you had, again, a big check to pay for all that
marketing reports.
Yeah. But now you can get all that information. It's like a David and Goliath situation that's happening, where you have small business owners that are learning how to create and publish and hire individuals in their company to help them with some of that publishing and be able to get a message out quicker. But I think right now what make marketing so crazy is that you have so much platform, so much technology, so many rules of engagement that you have to learn on each platform.
Right.
They kind of get a little overwhelmed with that. But I think that's what is. And then on the other end, on the consumer end, there's the thought of thinking about what the consumer values more, because that's where you can get into this battle as a company. It's like what the seller values versus what the customer is really valuing. Right. So there's a shift there, and that's one thing I like. Even with some of the things that I've learned here in this company with value-centered management, there is a principle of looking at what is it that the customer wants first and working your way backwards. That really is giving us a real good cutting edge in this, because we can start giving value. And I like how even some of these later individuals that are marketing that really focus on giving that value until they want to buy. So it's like you have the book called Value, Sell, or Jab, Right Hook. It's really good to see some of that happening now, where you can just focus on serving individuals to the point where they say, hey, I want to give you my money. How can I buy this product? Right. So I really like that right now.
Yeah, and I wanted to, that's a perfect segue, Marcus, because that's what I want to kind of touch on too, is when you look at brand marketing, you look at direct marketing, we come into the age of direct marketing where literally a kid can get a phone and change the world.
Yes.
Right. That's where we're at today. Like, that has never been in the history of mankind that someone could just wake up one day and literally come up with something that influences the world. Right. It can go viral. And on top of that, we think about the impact of that. They can get measurable data on anything that they want to offer, anything they want to give. But speaking of value-centered management and thinking about value, one thing that I think, and I even want to practice this more in my own businesses and companies, is that the dark side of direct marketing is that you can get so caught up in the numbers and in the measuring and in the constant ask, where I'm asking and trying to get you to become a lead, trying to get you to buy this, that you forget to give value to people, right? Yes. And you forget to tell your story. So you end up just always being the guy or the gal that is saying, can you do this? Can you sign up for that? And you forget to just put content out there that serves the community and makes your story louder and larger, so that when it's time to buy, to your point, they almost want to buy. Because again, people want to be a part of a story. They want to be a part of something that's compelling. But and this is just to all of us, right? And even speaking to myself, like looking for ways to consistently tell our story that doesn't ask anything back. It's a contribution to the mind of the people that makes them respect and know and honor what you stand for, so that when you come back for anything direct, it has substance with it.
Yeah, it's definitely serving the community that you're helping is really, washing the feet of those individuals and serving them. It brings something out in you as an individual, but also it helps them to see the value that you're providing. So I really like when we talked about not too long ago in some of our previous sessions, just with introducing all the entrepreneurs to this new world, is you can lose yourself in whether it's the numbers, the technology, or the platforms that you're using. Authenticity is so important. It's a commodity within itself, because your customer is hearing so much today. And their attention, that grand fight for attention that's happening out there. Everyone, they talk about the reptilian brain, even though I do believe there is a reptilian brain, but in a scientific sense, the mind always look at, should I eat it? Should I kill it? Or should I mate with it? Should I build a relationship or a bond with it? And it's just a natural response. When you see an ad, you're either going to do one of those three. So that's one thing that's so important, is knowing that your audience is, they have their hands up, they have their guards up constantly, and everyone is on information overload. And that's where the psychology that is happening behind marketing is becoming a lot more blurred when it comes to understanding, like, are they really resonating with my brand, or are they just following me because I make a lot of money, because I say that I'm doing it? So authenticity. So I like how Alex Hormozi is really doing it. He's just finished doing a lot online as well. But one thing that's good about his story is he talks about what I've done first. Then I'm sharing how I did it, and then I'm giving that away for free. Show you how to do it. Yeah, I'm going to show you how to do it. And of course, when you do it that way, you don't have to worry about a lot of, things that are not authentic out there. You can, but it's hard. You have to document your story a lot more.
Right, and almost because there's so much direct response, and because the beauty is the freedom of marketing now is everyone can do it. Everyone can be a part. But it's the detriment too, because it loses its value. It's almost like an economy. The more currency that's in a market, it dilutes that currency, right? And so the currency of attention, the currency, and it's the fact that we can go on these social media platforms and we can begin to get ads. The challenge is, we have to remember we're in competition with that social media company too, who is also fighting for the attention of the people. And when we are coming on a social media site to do direct marketing, we're normally asking those people to come off the social site to come to what we're doing. So why would a social media site be encouraged about you taking them off the platform that makes them money? So you're in a battle not only with the competitors, you're in a battle with the actual social media sites that are having all these rules and changing rules about how you can get the attention of the people that they make money on, because really it's not good for them when you take them off the site to your site. And so this is a battle. It's an attention battle.
Definitely. I remember we talked about different platforms, and I remember you had a slogan some time ago talking about social media. You used the cover of different magazines. I think it was Time magazine, and it showed at first it was like, you are the person of the year, and it showed YouTube. And then, of course, later it showed Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. And it just showed like there was a phenomenon with YouTube when it first happened. Of course, people didn't know that you can monetize on it, do reviews and start, making traffic. But later we start seeing that, the person of the year is really the owners of the platforms. And I think a lot of influencers are seeing that. And that's where a lot of business owners, they get a little leery about jumping out there even in social media, because when they go there, they end up seeing all these rules that they have to comply with the platform, and not understanding that it's a marketplace. You have to go there to pull your market out of it, and you got to have your own domain at the end of the day to have people to come to your own area that you can speak to them. But you can lose yourself and just, okay, I guess I got to be an influencer. I need to, you end up working for YouTube, or you end up working for that platform that you're on. But the key is just to understand that there is a dynamic with that, and you just have to understand it. But that's what we are helping, and we're doing it as well, and we're showing our experience, but we're also looking at, how to make that easier for other entrepreneurs to understand.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm so grateful for things we're doing, like the Run My Business Challenge and all these things, trying to teach entrepreneurs the deeper knowledge they need to know about how things are changing. Like you cannot stay the same. You have to understand some of this stuff. And it brings me to, we have to talk about this before we close this out, is artificial intelligence. And I often like to bring up, I did a show one time on artificial ignorance to understand that because artificial intelligence is going out and getting information that's out there, and if the collective voice out there is not right, you can actually get artificial ignorance. And one thing I just want to talk about a little bit, Marcus, is that one of the key things in marketing that always resonates is authenticity. And there are some people, even if they're an authentic fool, it resonates. You know what I mean? If people are being themselves and just completely just a nut, whatever it is, people are drawn to that because it's like, man, he really mean that. Like, she really, like, that's from her heart, you know? So it's authenticity is a very powerful thing in marketing. And what is happening as we begin to lose authenticity because we're trying to be like other people. We're trying to do whatever, like, it's a race to the bottom when people start to think about, what do I have to do to get a like? What do I have to do to get a follower? Because we all know some of the sites that'll you know, show someone skimpily dressed or show someone, you know, doing something violent, show some, like, it's gonna get the most likes, it's gonna get the most followers, right? So where do you go with this and keeping your authenticity? And then in the age of artificial intelligence, we have to remember, in the name is artificial.
It's artificial.
Right? So how we can get so caught up in ChatGPT and all these tools that it could literally just swallow up our authenticity to where the mistrust, the distrust, the concern of whether or not someone is real is going to get so high that it's going to get more and more challenging to get someone to really believe in what you're saying, unless you can, through all that noise, still find authenticity. What do you say about that?
Because attention goes both ways. And I think that's what's been happening is you're trying to get customers' attention, but attention also, you start wanting attention as well.
That's good.
And you begin to get kind of lost in the likes and whatever. I need more followers, and I have so-and-so people following me on this platform or Instagram, what have you. But what's happened is, since that has been a dynamic, you can really see how a lot of business owners, again, they're apprehensive of doing that. But you had, again, when it comes to publishing, you had where a person used to spend 30 years of their life to really publish a book and say, hey, I've been a professor, I've been doing this for years, I built businesses. And normally that's how it was with publishing. You know, a person, they had to log their whole journey. But now, because publishing can be so instant, anyone can go out there and say, I'm an expert.
Yeah.
Now, there's a way that you can be an expert, like, but it takes time. Like, you have to show what you're currently doing. So
let's say level of mastery.
Yeah, you may not have a million people on any platform, but you can say, hey, I'm documenting my journey to 1 million, and this is what I'm doing. This is working for me. This is not working.
And that keeps you authentic.
Right. And eventually, you're going to start seeing whoever, you know, only have 1,000 want to get to where you are. I mean, that's your followers.
Right.
I mean, and that's fine. But the key is to stay authentic, to say, hey, like, I know what we're about to do is going to probably blow up on the internet anytime soon.
Right.
But it's okay to tell that story and say, this is where I'm in the middle of my story.
Right.
But we're going to, you know, go here or go there. I think it's very good. But not to lose your authenticity is so important in publishing, because you have to do something before you go out there and say, okay, it's just like I think someone mentioned a 18-year-old trying to give marriage advice. You know, I'm a marriage coach
and that's
by my
there.
product. You know, like, and that's you can have a lot of that in imposter syndrome that's out there. But the key is, again, there is just like with artificial intelligence, just like there was the radio that was created, these different technological advances with television, we're at a nexus point now where, okay, you can use it for good and you can use it for evil, but with artificial intelligence, you have to put it in its proper place still.
Right.
So, and I think that's something that's good for us to start talking more about is what is, and you see people online now making passive, say, they'll use the word making passive income, or they'll say, I have a business that runs itself. Now, that could be misleading, because we know that when we really unpack what does it mean to make passive income or to run a business automatically, is really you have to put a lot more work up front for that to kind of pay off later. And it will be some things that you use technology to advance that. So if you're sending email, if I'm doing that, it's a one-to-one communication. It's direct sales in a way. I'm sending you an email. But where automation comes in is I may add a technology where I can send it a one-on-one email to 10,000 people at once. That's a form of automation. Now, with artificial intelligence, I would say if any business isn't considering it, they're going to get lost, because it's just like saying, I'm going to hold on to doing radio when TV came out.
Exactly.
But it's still going to need to be put in its proper place and how you use it.
Right.
Now, it's still artificial. I mean, you have to use it and you have to give it its intelligence as well.
Right.
So you have to know how to prompt it, how to make sure that it's done right so that it's used. But I like how you talk a lot about automation in the business, how you start putting it in certain processes. And even historically, when you talk about marketing, you always have people, you have processes, and then you have actual tools or technology that they've used. And that's what's going to, I feel, give us a great advantage at helping entrepreneurs, because it's just a tool, and you got to still have the process, and you still can't lose who you are as a person or individual.
Very well said, Marcus. And I know we're going to have to leave it here. This is so much. We're going to have to do this again, Marcus, for sure. I know if you all enjoyed this discussion, make sure you put that in the chat. This is a very powerful thing. And I do want to say that, to everyone listening out there, to keep in mind that, we're entering into a time now where marketing is concerned, where there's going to be a high demand for real and an oversupply of fake.
Yes.
Right? A high demand for real and an oversupply of fake. So we're going to have to make a distinction on what side. If you're in the fake world, eventually it's going to be exposed.
Yes, it will.
If you're in the real world, no matter how long it takes, when you rise up, you can stand, because there's nothing you have to try to do, because you are what you've been saying. You're authentic. You really become that. And we're at a time where now you want to make sure that in a world where the tail can wag the dog because of what the people can do, we have to make a distinction that we want to be the head of our direction. It's like me walking up to you with a bunch of tools and saying, here's all these tools I want to give you, Marcus, and you don't know what you're building though, right? So we all got to know, what are we building? And then use the tools as instruments to help us build, because if the tools become something to help us build, they're powerful. But if you start to thinking you're building the tools, right, or using the tools as the leadership of what you're doing, you're going to get lost in the tools and never build anything. I'm going to give you the final word, Marcus. What do you want to say to everyone out here listening to this discussion? I
really like what you mentioned about not losing yourself. And you don't want to lose yourself in any part of your business. At the end of the day, your business, there should be a why of why you even want to run the business. Like, is there something that you're trying to achieve to spend more time with your family, personally develop better? There should be a detachment from that at some point.
Right.
But I love how you mentioned about not losing yourself in this conversation. I know I didn't know what we were going to talk about today, but I really love the authenticity discussion about as it regards to marketing, because I've seen that a lot online. I know a lot of people are feeling that when you see the too good to be true stories, the pop-ups, the spam, and just, people not telling the truth that out there. Yeah. And then it kind of makes you, and we're in the age of spin, we don't know what is truth anymore. Like, we begin to look at different ads, we begin to look at different videos, but authenticity is so important, and not to lose yourself in the marketing or the technology side of it. And then it's good to know that people, they want to have a conviction. So when you be authentic and show them your convictions, of course, there are good and bad convictions that are out there, but you can see that people, they at least know that you can build a community around that. And of course, you can serve people a lot better, one to many. Yeah. And that's what's good for entrepreneurs, small business owners, is to not try to pretend like they are serving, that's why local marketing is so important. It's good to say that, hey, I'm the best gym in this small town, than to say I'm the best gym in the world.
Right.
Because that's what you're seeing a lot now.
Right.
People going online, they're it's crazy. It's just, you don't know what to believe. Yeah. But when you say, hey, I've done this for this family, I've done this for this community, I've done this for this city, I've done this for this state, you can see that ascension story, and you can build that a lot more, and it can be a lot more authentic if you do that. So
very powerful.
Really appreciate that.
No, thank you, Marcus. Very powerful. I think it was Russell Brunson. I was at an event, got to spend some time with him, and he made a statement and said, you always have a powerful chance to serve the person who you were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful statement. The person you were 5 years ago, you can be an expert to that person, right? If you really understand it. And so, listen, all of you that's been listening to this, I want to thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. This has been another episode here on You Are a CEO. Make sure to come back to this episode. Leave some comments about your thoughts about marketing, the challenges, the things that stood out to you. I want to also remind you, the point of you seeing this, make sure you find out when our next Run My Business Challenge is. You can go to runmybusinesschallenge.com and make sure you come to that. If you like this, you will love coming to that challenge and understanding how to operate your business in this modern time to really successfully create wealth, save money, and to stop business from being so stressful to so many. And if you also want a free gift, make sure you go to stopleavingmoneyonthetable.com. I have a free gift out there for entrepreneurs that is very, very useful. But that being said, we want to thank you once again for being here with us at URCO, and make sure with all this business stuff, never lose yourself, because still the most important business is the business of you. Until next time, I'm Michael E. Parker. We'll see you then.